Thank you for downloading episode 351 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. This week, we have the Sugas, homelessness, new judges, the AI Godfather, and moving to the country. I'm Dave Roberts. With me this week is one of the OGs of the show, filling in for Ken Poland, is Jessica Szilagyi.
Hi, Dave.
Howdy. Thank you for filling in.
Of course.
I know the dumpling is not feeling all that well, so you probably committed before that.
Oh, yes, I did, but we made it work. But yes, she was just going too hard before the holidays, and you know how it is.
So you're going through a toddler hangover.
Yes. That would be an understatement. But we're still here, so we're surviving for now.
And the dumpling is one of the most darling children I've ever seen. I
mean, I think she's pretty cute, but
like I said before, she comes from good stock on her father's side.
Ha. Ha.
Well, I do want to say Happy New Year to everybody because as the show drops, it's damn near New Year's Eve.
That was fast.
I've heard that before. You were asking for that one.
Yeah, I know. I walked right into it, but I despise the time. Like I enjoy the holidays and I love like how the holidays feel, but I despise the time between Thanksgiving and New Year's because it's like, well, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it is just pedal to the metal, speeding through everything, and
productivity stops.
But yes, but then the last 2 weeks of the year, our productivity is like in reverse. Like we're all in a deficit. And with Christmas on a Wednesday this year, it was even worse.
Yeah, I was talking to you before the show. I'm not that big a fan of Christmas. Look, the religious aspect of it is great. I hate how money just disappears from for somebody like me between, as you said, Thanksgiving and the New Year is people don't spend money on new air conditioning systems. I mean, they will mortgage their future to make sure their kids have presents.
Sure.
Now, I can't remember who I was talking to, but I said I saw a video of a guy who boxed something up for his kids, and it was just all the bills he pays for Christmas.
Right. Congratulations.
Yeah, enjoy that heat.
It's kind of I don't want to say too much because it kind of gets into one of the topics we're going to talk about later, but it's very easy, and it's even easier with kids, I think, to get, or when you have kids in your life, to get caught up in gifts and what you think will excite them and bring them all kinds of joy. But I think there's like I don't know. I mean, for lack of a better word, and to kind of echo what you already said, like there's like a hangover from that, right? Like the overstimulation, just burnout from losing the sights of what the season is about.
Well, it's one of the reasons that Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Mm-hmm. It's not just because I'm fat and like to eat, but
sure.
it's Thanksgiving is all about family. It's getting family together, and there's no pretense. There's no stress that goes into it. I honest to God, enjoy being with my family, and that's what Christmas should be is being around family. But there's so much stress that goes into, especially for a guy, the 2 weeks before Christmas. Because that's when we start shopping. I'm just lucky that Connie and I don't give each other gifts. We take awesome vacations.
I think that's a great way to do it. I mean, most adults get each other or get themselves what they need throughout the year, right? Or even things that they want. So it's kind of like that. What do you, by the time Christmas rolls around, what do you actually need to add to?
Well, for men, it's
household
socks
stuff?
and underwear.
Sure.
But again, Connie and I don't do, we do stocking stuffers. We do treats. Literally treats. Connie got me some Queen Anne, I think is what it's called, chocolate cherries and stuff like that, and I got her some Harry and David chocolates. But that's all we do, because our real gift to each other is the time that we spend together, traveling. And this year is going to be hopefully Hawaii, maybe Rome, but that's the time that we really enjoy with each other, is when we get a chance to go and just be us
Without the noise of everything else.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that she got so annoyed. We were in Niagara Falls, but our anniversary is July 7th. She got so annoyed because we did go for a long weekend, and my phone was ringing nonstop. I was working nonstop, and but oddly enough, that poor sick girl just wants to spend time with her husband, and unfortunately for her husband is me.
Yeah, I'm sure she just looks at it as unfortunately.
Well, she doesn't, and I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
You feel for her.
Well, of course, poor Connie. Poor Connie in perpetuity.
Poor Connie in perpetuity, yes. So this is a big year for doctor-free tracking of blood sugar.
I mean, it's obviously not a story that applies to everybody, but I think it speaks to like the thing that we all believe, which is that you should be able to obtain devices that help you track your blood sugar without having a prescription and having to go through a pharmacy. I mean, it was something that the FDA approved earlier this year, and I think they're finally available and for sale. And they're ones that are the continuous trackers. I don't think it's like just the, I guess it's like a moment in time. I don't know what the medical word is for that, but it's the continuous trackers, and you can get them. But I think, and honestly, like what's pathetic about it is I think that this is rooted some in like the Ozempic, Mounjaro trend, cool thing to do, because those are blood sugar regulating drugs at their root without the weight loss component. And I think that kind of laid the groundwork for this, which is sad, but I'll take anything that's less government regulation, especially when it's something as Some
of the trackers, they allow you in real time to see, can I have that piece of garlic bread? And as basic as that sounds, that's very important. Someone who's diabetic is, can I have a donut? Can I have that piece of garlic bread? And you're able to track it with your phone in real time. I think it's fantastic.
It is, but I mean, it's ridiculous that it takes this long, and it's ridiculous that it's not just like they're eliminating the regulation. They're saying, "Oh, we will allow you to buy these over the counter."
Well, yeah, that's the libertarian in us, but it should not have taken this long. You're absolutely right. Like, why should you have to go to the doctor to get something as basic as just checking your blood sugar? Now, don't get me wrong. You should probably have a physician if you know that you have the sugars, diabetes, or as Wilford Brimley put it, diabetes.
Well, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who would argue that if it's not regulated by the FDA, then you can't get insurance reimbursement or insurance coverage for it. But that really just opens up a can of worms for a bigger problem, which is how the insurance industry works and what is considered, because like you shouldn't have to have diabetes to be able to get a blood sugar monitor or glucose monitor if you want to monitor that to make sure. Like, why wait until you are at that point?
Well, we found that with birth control.
Right.
Is that now you can get birth control over the phone. But for years, it was extortion. If you don't come in and get your annual exam, you're not going to get birth control. And as much as I understand the need for the annual exam, but holding that over somebody's head to make sure you come in is all about dollars and cents. It has nothing to do with actually taking care of your patients.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that sort of extortion is when we have the tools. We have these tools available to us. Why in the hell should you have to go to the doctor? If you can monitor and regulate your blood sugar without using drugs, why that? Most of the physicians I know would be 100% behind that. As long as you keep it within whatever the parameters are, what damn difference does it make?
Well, I mean, the short answer is that they want to. I mean, it's sick care, not health care. It's not preventative care. America is driven by reactionary health care, not preventative. I mean, same reason that vitamins aren't covered and aren't something that are incentivized.
Well, I like to say that I'm in a very reactionary business with Dr. Cool. Is every time I go somewhere, and every time, most of the time when I go somewhere, it's an emergency. This is broken. So it's completely reactionary. With healthcare, don't we want to get ahead of things? Don't we want to get out ahead and say, "Oh, okay, let's address this before it becomes a problem"? And that's just not how healthcare works in this country.
Right.
All right, so homelessness is up 18% in 2024. It's a very interesting statistic.
Tell me why.
You and I were talking earlier before we got on the show about rent prices. How much it costs just to rent an apartment like where I live. Obviously, it's a lot cheaper down in Statesboro where you are, but a 2-bedroom apartment up here is like $2,500 a month, and that's a lot. And if you're somebody who's making $10 an hour, trying to make your life, trying to make out in life, that's really tough.
Yes. I think it's interesting that HUD blames soaring rents and the end of pandemic assistance.
I would say the pandemic assistance added to the inflation problem.
Absolutely. Between printing money and then giving people money, it absolutely and led to soaring rents and the inability to evict people. I mean, everything that happened during COVID led to where we are today, 1,000,000%. And that was from both sides of the aisle for those playing at home. But, I mean...
And look, the first checks that came out had Donald Trump's signature on there.
Sure.
Don't think for one second that the the incoming administration is conservative, fiscally conservative, because they're not. They're absolutely not. You know, I don't consider Trump a conservative. Now, do I prefer him over Kamala? Of course I do. But he's not a damn conservative. He asked for, as we discussed last week with Ken, is he was asking to remove the limit off the federal charge card, is to build up as much debt as whatever they want, and that's not how you handle inflation. That's not how you get inflation under control, for sure.
No. We are where we are because everyone who was in power and who is in power now contributed to it. But I just thought it was interesting that HUD, I guess, admits, usually, you don't usually see that, right? Like, you don't usually see that government suggests that the rest of government contributed to a problem. Yeah. For sure. I mean, yeah.
Now, look, homelessness for the majority that I've seen is a mental health issue. As much as I say it's really expensive to get an apartment, in Metro Atlanta and all that stuff, it's a mental health issue. And we are not addressing mental health in this country. We address everything else around it, but we don't actually address the mental health crisis we have. This is where you have people that kill people on subways. Most homeless are homeless because they don't have any other options, obviously, but they don't have any other options to do anything about it. And a lot of these people most of them are mentally ill because they can't get into a government program or any other program to help them. Is because they don't fit in the boxes for government.
Well, and it's only in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years that we have seen a movement on a very large scale to destigmatize mental health issues. I mean, it was something that most people suffered quietly about, and therapy was considered taboo, and medication was considered taboo, and all of the things. You never talked about it. You didn't ask about it. You didn't share about it. It was, it was something people dealt with privately and quietly and on their own. And I think that most people, whether you've dealt with something on a mental health level or someone who has, I think most people will realize that's a terrible approach. But what's interesting about the statistics, I mean, I guess it's interesting on a big scale. It's not interesting on the focus that we've had, but homelessness for veterans is down, at least from 2023.
Well, more focus is being put on veteran homelessness, and it's not coming from the government. It's coming from private organizations like Tunnels to Towers, for instance, and these other charities that really put in the work to get these veterans, in the case that you're talking about, in to talk to somebody, into a facility, and get them off the streets. I've always said that veteran homelessness is a mental illness issue. It's not an issue of they can't afford this or can't afford that. It's mental illness. And you're absolutely right. When you are in the military, it is frowned upon to go to therapy. They won't throw you out for it, but if you're the crazy guy, you're not the one that's going to get the promotion coming up. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. And that's a problem that as a nation, we need to address. It's one of the reasons that veteran suicide is so high is because there's a huge stigma as far as mental health goes. And it's, I've been fairly open about having to go to therapy after my brother died. And the only reason I went was my wife forced me to go. But I didn't have the tools to deal with it. And mm-hmm. when I went to therapy, I got the tools to deal with that. But I also understand that had it happened while I was still in uniform, it would have been seen as weakness to go and do that.
Which is unfortunate.
It is, and it goes to the male machismo and all that stuff. That it's frowned upon. It's seen as weakness to do that. You're not mentally strong enough. All right, so Biden approved 235 judges in the last 9/10 years.
Yep, and he only beat out Donald Trump by 1. Isn't that something?
Is it just cyclical?
So they said like when you research judicial appointments, like it's not something new, right? Like even, I mean, Governor Let's Make a Deal here in Georgia a couple years ago, before he left, he wanted to expand the Georgia Supreme Court, the Georgia Court of Appeals. He stacked the courts as much as he could for control, I guess, angle. But if you research these appointments at the federal level, this trend of just appointing like everybody and people resigning when a new administration comes in started when George W. Bush was in office. And it seems to have declined.
People were mad at RBG for waiting as long as she did.
Right.
And look, her politics and I do not align. However, she was sharp until the day she died.
Sure.
She was completely capable of being a justice till the day she died.
Absolutely.
But they want, the left wants justice to retire before Trump comes in, because they're afraid that if they have medical issues or something like that, and that Trump will get a chance to appoint a conservative judge. And I think that's a kind of disgusting way of looking at it. You know, to tell RBG she needed to retire before her death, and we'll get into a little of that later. But for her to have to resign because she's getting older, that's not the way the Constitution was written. But the Constitution says it's a lifetime appointment.
Yes, but what's more disgusting is that we have judges that lean one way or the other at all.
I agree with you.
I mean, it's pathetic no matter who is being appointed. It's pathetic how partisan and political our judges are in every circuit. Like everyone always hates on the circuit where Chicago is and the circuit for the Northern California and Oregon and all that. It is literally the same everywhere. It's just whether or not you get the rulings that you want.
Well, here's the
thing. They're not based in constitutionality anymore.
Yeah, but that the dividing line really is not Republican, Democrat. The dividing line is whether or not you believe the Constitution is a quote unquote living, breathing document. I disagree with that. I say that it was written in ink, and the Constitution says what it says, period. Mm. It's not a living, breathing document. It does not evolve. No, it is what it is. From 1787 up until today, it says what the hell it says. And if you want to change the Constitution, that's fine. Go and have a constitutional convention and then change it. But to say that the words change definitions as we move along is absurd. What the founding fathers did was not about an evolving process. It was about values. When you talk about the Bill of Rights, it's about values. The right to speak your mind, the right to arm yourself. Those are values. They weren't specific to the time. They were values. And we're losing that perspective.
I agree.
Well, I'm sure you do as a fellow lowercase L libertarian. But we're losing perspective of the values that this country is built on, and that sucks.
I mean, this quote from Chuck Schumer. There was this big expose in The Guardian on Schumer's departure and the, I guess, mountains they had to overcome to get where they are at 235. And his quote was, "I don't know exactly what Trump will do, but I can tell you this. The judiciary will be one of our strongest, if not our strongest, barrier against what he does. When we started out, we knew it would be a very difficult job to do more than Trump had done, but we did. We got 235. More than a quarter of the federal judiciary was appointed by our Senate and by the president. I mean, so they set out to do it because it says Schumer said he and Biden had hatched a plan 4 years ago, not only to prioritize legislation, but to focus on appointing as many judges as possible.
Yeah, everybody focuses on SCOTUS. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, SCOTUS doesn't take up everything that comes up. Is those 235, that's federal court. And SCOTUS doesn't take every case that comes before them. So those 235 are very, very important. I don't know the right way to really interview judges. I think Gorsuch was probably the best that I saw in a Senate hearing. And I think it was Gorsuch that talked about putting everything to the side. You have, and I think the way he put it was, you have to leave the kitchen table at home. Mm-hmm. All the things that you talk about with your family, you leave that, and you come in with a clean slate. And I really appreciated that quote, is you come in with a clean slate and you compare it against the Constitution, and that's it. It's not your personal beliefs. It's not how you feel about things. It's how does it apply constitutionally.
Well, it's similar to the way we approach jurors, right? Like, people seem to think that any type of media or social media conversation or anything like that is what makes someone have an unfair trial or an unbiased trial or unbiased look at a criminal case. And that's not the standard. The courts, ironically, have held repeatedly that the standard is not whether or not a person has had any exposure to a case, but whether or not they can come in and look at the case objectively and make a decision based on the information that is provided to them. And that is literally the same thing that our judges are supposed to do. But
I was going to say the same thing, is that should come from the bench as well.
Totally. Like, the fact that jurors often do a better job than federal appointed judges or at the state level or wherever, like, that's pathetic.
Well, jurors also mess up, much like the case of what's her name down there that got hit with the assault charge instead of the murder charge.
Ashling Griffin.
Griffin,
but
yes.
They got it more right than the judge did.
Well, maybe so, but they still sent her to prison.
I understand, but my point is that they still were able to look at it more objectively and without tilting towards the prosecution than jurors were.
Well, and we know the queen of that is Catherine Bernard, who's absolutely the queen of that, of jury nullification. Mm-hmm. Is the idea that the jurors should be able to go in and go, yeah, that's stupid and shouldn't be against the law, not guilty. But it's such a crapshoot with Wahadir, or as it was put in My Cousin Vinny, Gwahadir. But that's why we have that process, is to interview the jurors and find the ones that the attorneys believe can have an open mind. And that's a little difficult to find now because people come in. And look, it's impossible to have someone come in with just zero opinions. You carry your emotional baggage and your political baggage with you. It's very difficult to find someone who can take all that baggage and leave it at the door. It's very difficult. It does happen. I would hope that I'd have the ability to do that, but I also know that I'm probably not going to be called for jury duty in Paulding County anytime soon.
But we're not going to get anything better until we have a population that does not expect our judges to be left-leaning and right-leaning. Like, we have the judiciary we deserve.
Well, that we've earned. For
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, people want Trump to appoint conservative judges when he gets in. That is no better than what Schumer and Biden plotted 4 years ago.
You're absolutely right. It is no better. When Trump interviews or Biden interviews a possible justice, they get into politics. It should be, can you read and comprehend and apply the Constitution? That's it, period. It's not whether or not you agree with individual cases don't apply to it. It is, can you apply the Constitution in a proper way? And that's all a federal judge is supposed to do.
But most of them can't. So here we are.
So here we are. By the way, this is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any other respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you could find other episodes and relevant stories over the GeorgiaVirtue.com. All right, so the mule. This is both sad. I mean, it's sad on two levels. All right, there's a representative. Her name is Kay Granger from Texas. She has not cast a vote for, I think it's like 8 months. And the reason is she has dementia. She's been in a home. No one knew where the hell this woman was. She was in a home.
Do you believe that?
I shouldn't say that no one. I'm sure it was an inside secret. I mean, wouldn't you think so? That people who have been around her staff, they all noticed that she was, losing her marbles.
Right. But like nobody. I mean, do you think that all the rest of Congress didn't know where she was? Nobody asked? Or do you think they did know and just kept it to themselves?
I would say it's probably an inside secret that they all knew. But if you're a Republican and you're very much into R versus D, the Republicans only have a 5-seat majority in the House. 5. And one of that 5, 20%, doesn't show up to work. Now, she retired. She did not run again. So January 1, this goes away. But it's dementia is a long time to get to that point. Like somebody in her orbit should have said, because she's up there. She was up there for a decade and a half. That somebody would have said, "Hey, Congresswoman, it's time to go." Before it was so critical that she's in a mental health care facility.
Yeah, I mean, and also she didn't know. I mean, it's not uncommon for Congress members to not be visible in their districts, right? Like that's a thing. But I mean, what about the people who ran the home? They didn't run their mouths too?
I don't know. She's 81, and look, the age is not that big of a deal. If you're 81 and sharp, that's fine. My grandfather was sharp to the day he died, and he was in his 80s. My father's very sharp, and he's in his late 70s. As long as you're sharp enough, that's fine. But there had to be somebody around her, even if she didn't have the self-reflection to say, "Oh man, I'm losing it." somebody around her should have said, Congresswoman, let's let you walk into the sunset before she ended up in a damn home.
Right.
And I know that's a difficult conversation to have with somebody, because no one wants to admit that they're slipping.
Of course not.
Well, you deny it to yourself that you're slipping. But when you go to the John McCain route and die in office and stuff like that, is you're not helping your constituents.
Well, I don't know. Things.
Do what?
Like what? Why do you think this came out?
I don't know. I don't know why they came after it, because I'm assuming it came out because the Republicans are frustrated that they can't, even with a 5-vote majority, they can't get anything done because 20 Republicans don't align with the rest of them. So I'm thinking that's probably why it came out. And January 1, there's a new congressperson coming in to take her place. She did not run for election this last year.
Mm-hmm. She obviously didn't do a very good job campaigning either. Like in her opposition research, that should have come up, right?
You would think so.
I mean, I'm just saying.
All right. More millennials are leaving cities in favor of rural life.
So first of all, I can relate to this because I did this before it was cool, about 9.5 years ago at this point. But the story is fascinating to me because I have seen a lot of people talking about this on social media, on TikTok, and this is not the first news article that I've seen about it. And they say millennials in the headline because you can't be so specific in the headline, but they're talking about like a little bit of bleeding over on both ends of the millennial, I guess, group. But like there's some Gen X and Gen Z people and included in this, but it's not people, because it's not like millennials can't retire, right? These are people who are relocating because they think it will offer a better quality life, even if they sacrifice convenience of some things. And that was one of the reasons I moved down here. I was tired of like the hustle and bustle and sitting in traffic and having no life outside of spending an hour in my car on the front end of the day and the back end of the day, and living at like the absolute max of my income, and again having nothing to show for it. I didn't love it. And I also felt like at that time I felt like a lot of the people that I was in a social circle with had different priorities than me, and so that was part of it too. I didn't have a kid. I didn't have a family, and my job, like I left my job in the city to come down here and start something completely new. But I don't regret it, and I couldn't see myself going back. And so I think this is a really interesting trend, but I also will be interested to see like in 5 years, how many of these people go back versus stay in rural areas, because I know that some of them aren't cut out for it.
Well, as far as that goes, it is a lot easier to leave your home in the city and sell your home in the city and buy a very nice house outside of the city. Doing the reverse is very difficult because obviously homes in the city are a lot more expensive.
I agreed with you until my mom started looking to leave Alpharetta and come down here. It is not as much as a disparity as it was when I came 9 years ago.
Maybe not. But it's what's the I can't remember what the term is. Is it trad woman, trad wife?
Yeah, trad wife.
There's a whole thing with women who are going the traditional route and being homemakers, tending their garden, making homemade bread. So there's a whole movement behind that. And I don't think it's a bad movement. It doesn't work in my family because, both Connie and I work. But it's interesting that this idea of, I hate to use it, frontier life sort of thing, but acting more like people you see on Bonanza, Gunsmoke, and that kind of stuff over, I am woman, hear me roar. So it's very interesting to me that we see that we see that there is a yearning in people's soul to get back to the basics of life.
I agree. And I think that it also sheds light on a willingness by people, like I think things, and I think a lot of this was inflation driven, not all of it, but I think that as things got more expensive, people were like, what can we live without? Like you have a 2-income household that is just busting their tail. Not to say that you shouldn't or that that's a bad thing at all.
But barely getting by.
Right. But barely getting by. And for what? Because in a lot of situations, even women who really want to work, they have a hard time leaving their kids behind. And I, there's always this, this is getting off on a tangent a little bit, but there's always this war between stay-at-home moms and working moms and who has it harder. And it's not a competition. They're just two very different lives. But I think people like working moms, even when they want to work, they still want the maximum amount of time with their kids as they can, generally speaking, to have that. And I think that when you move outside the city and the cost of living is at least a little bit smaller, you have a little bit lower, you have a fighting chance of being able to have a single income household and have somebody raising the kids. The other thing is just, and it wasn't mentioned in the article, but it's a big thing, is the cost of childcare. I know plenty of households who the woman would love to work, or even the dad would love to work, but they don't because the entire salary would go to childcare. $2,500, $3,000 a month just down the drain. They come home with they don't even have a little bit of spending money on the backside of that. And I don't think childcare is necessarily less expensive in rural areas because we also have a shortage of childcare access. But I think you have a better shot of getting by on one income.
Well, you don't really live in a rural area anymore. Statesboro is not rural. I mean, it's just not anymore. Every time I'm down there, I see another restaurant open up and stuff like that. It's not Atlanta for sure, but it's also not in the middle of the sticks like it was 30 years ago. I would agree with you that it does. All right. Well, I don't mean to be sexist here, but we're just use the example of a mom. Mm-hmm. Why would you go to work for $10 or $15 an hour when it costs more for childcare?
Right. It doesn't make sense.
Well, what compounds that is that $15 or $20 an hour job allows you to advance, but you can't afford to lose $200 a month on childcare. So it really truncates the career path of a woman who has a youngin because she can't afford to go to work. And I'm not sitting here stumping for a government subsidy on it. I'm just saying it is what it is.
Yes, I mean, it is what it is, and I don't know what the fix is. I think the Georgia legislature, one of the recommendations from the glorious Brian Strickland from I can't remember what counties he represents, but like Peachtree City area. He's freaking horrible. But he did a study committee on it, and one of their recommendations is to figure out ways to make childcare more affordable. And you know exactly what that means, and that is incentivizing it in tax credits and subsidies and all the things that will ultimately make it more expensive.
Right. If you want something to be expensive, make it free.
Right. But, I think that the leaving big cities in favor of a rural life or quasi-rural life or whatever it may be, I think that trend is accompanied by this other trend we're seeing of going towards minimalism and away from consumerism. Like maybe not, like no one expects you to have like 2 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, and a pair of shoes. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about like a need for less stuff. And prioritizing, like you see a lot of families asking for Christmas presents for their kids to be like classes or activities or tickets to some sort of museum or things like that instead of just more stuff. Because like kind of like you and we're talking about with Connie, like quality time.
And look, I've one of my nephews is very much into experiences. He's a big he's an actor. I mean, but that's what he likes is offer to take him to Wicked or something, which I did not like Wicked at all. I didn't see the movie, but I saw the play. Mm-hmm. I don't like musicals, so you can tell. Right. But yeah, that's what he enjoys. But it's also this movement towards, when they say rural, I don't think it really is that. I think it's getting back to tradition. And I think that there are a lot of people that want to get back to the idea that when the kids come home and the school bus drops them off, mom or dad is there waiting for them. Mm-hmm. And, that's not something that I had because both my parents worked. My mom worked during the day. My dad worked at night.
But the world was a different place.
Well, it was. Yeah, I was a latchkey kid, which I don't fault my parents for, but I think there's this movement towards that. I have a niece who left Baltimore to move down to Florida on several acres, and one of the things that's difficult about having her travel is, they have chickens and all that stuff. Is there's this, even though she is further left than I am right, but she has chickens at home and all that stuff. Is I think that there's a movement towards self-reliance, I guess is the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. I think that's the best way to put it. It's not a political movement. It is honestly that self-reliance that, you harvest your own eggs and when the chicken's not productive anymore, it goes in the pot.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely not political. And I think that people, I don't think that the people are making these, maybe some of them, but by and large, it's not people migrating to different areas simply so they can be away from government or resist the government or all these things. I think it's just like how they're using their time and how they're using their resources and what they're getting out of life. And that sounds like super pie in the sky. But I think that's just how it is. I really do.
I think there is a yearning from the next generation to spend more time with family. And a lot of that is being at home. In the 80s, we had movies like, what was the movie that the woman ended up with a baby and stuff like that? I can't remember what the name of the movie was, but it was about her challenges and her surging forward in her corporate career. but I think that there's a pullback from that. And look, there's nothing wrong with it. My mother was a working professional. My wife is a working professional. It's not. I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm just saying that there's a movement towards spending more time with your kids, and for those who can. And look, that's not available to everybody. Not everybody can do that.
Totally.
But if it's available to you, and if it means that your car has to last 2 more years or something like that, as far as money goes, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it. And even with Emily, my niece, with her moving literally from Baltimore, or actually she was in a suburb of DC, she was in Maryland, to move from that hustle and bustle and then live on 5 acres. And she and her husband both work from home, but to go into raising chickens and things, it's not financial. There's a feeling of reward when you eat what you produced. I get it when we eat fish that I caught. Obviously, raising chickens and you eat those eggs. People who are hunters have the same feeling for eating the animal that they took. So there's a feeling of reward that goes along with it. At least that I've seen.
No, I totally agree.
All right, Jessica. As we're winding down, what do you have for your closing thought?
Well, first, when the show drops, there will be a new day in Bullitt County and the Ogeechee Circuit. Daphne Totten will no longer be the district attorney, and I think that is something to celebrate. Yes, a lot of other new elected officials who have a new vision for the area will be getting sworn in as well, and I'm excited for them. But I am most excited for the people that Daphne Totten will be gone, because I think that everyone deserves a fighting chance with the criminal justice system to have it be fair and unbiased. Even if they're guilty of sin, they deserve for it to be constitutional and not emotional. So that's exciting. The other thing is that I just wanted to direct people to this. It's a lengthy article because it's in the Reason magazine for the January 2025 issue, but there's an article about how the Freedom of Information Act gave rise to government transparency laws around the world. And I think most people can agree that whether it's FOIA at the federal level or the Georgia Open Records Act, like there's lots that could be added to it to improve it. But it is still an amazing tool for people, and it's a model in other countries, and I just think it's fascinating to see how it evolved and how other countries, I guess, have modeled it after it. So I would encourage you to read it on Reason if you have time. It doesn't take too long. It's just too long for me to summarize in a closing thought. So
well, Reason is one of those websites that does get into the weeds of things. So a lot of the articles are long-winded, but
true.
They're very informative because they will go into the history and why something is. So me as a dork, I love reading Reason because they do that. They go into the history behind why something is. So I certainly appreciate it. That's very good. The only thing I have to say is, Jesse, thank you for filling in.
Sure.
Ken, I'm sure, is already in a cast. He's skiing on Mount Hood right now. So he'll go to his first commissioners meeting in a cast.
Lord of mercy.
And he did one of the... I was making fun of him, but I said you went all the way across the country and still had to do the obligatory matching pajama picture.
Oh yes, I saw that. It looked fabulous and very trendy.
Very trendy.
Yes.
So, big thanks to Eric Company, who takes Awful Audio, turns into something you can listen to. Huge thanks to Jessica Szilagyi for filling in for Kenneth this week. I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.
Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. Days been gone, a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon.